Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming to this. I guess it's the third of these, the third Industry Connections webinar. So I'm really excited about, we have a great couple of speakers, and we have a lot of panelists or breakout room speakers for the second half. And so again, I'm Ian Schneider. I'm the, I guess the chair of the Student Affairs Subcommittee at BMES. And so it's a great opportunity to have some speakers come in and talk and interact with some of the students that are part of our community. Just before, again, I want to, before I forget to, I want to thank both Erin Spinner and James Kim for doing this. I really appreciate you giving 2 hours of your time to us and to the students. That's that's a big ask, and I appreciate that. I also appreciate all the panelists or breakout session speakers that were able to come as well. Interacting with students is really important. So thanks so much for that. Thank you also for the rest of the committee for pulling together a good list of panelists. And then also I'd just like to thank Caitlin, who's done a tremendous job kind of organizing this. Okay, great. So I want to just go over really briefly what the order will be here. So I will give a quick introduction to Erin Spinner, and she will talk. We'll have a little bit of Q&A after that, and then I'll give an introduction to James Kim. He will give a presentation. We'll have a little bit of Q&A after that, and then after about an hour or so, we will break out into smaller groups. We will need to actually leave this, right? Is that right? We will have to leave this and go to another link, but we'll do that in an orderly fashion. We'll have different speakers in different breakout rooms, and then you can choose breakout room based on the speaker or the area. Okay. Great. So first, I want to introduce Erin Spinner. So Erin has a BS in mechanical engineering from Kettering University and a PhD in biomedical engineering from Georgia Tech. She's over 15 years of experience in working in biomedical engineering. She started out at Edwards Life Sciences, moved to Abbott, and then is currently at Boston Scientific as VP of clinical there. She may go over a little more of kind of her trajectory, but I'm really excited to hear about what she has to say. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Erin.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. I've got a few slides, not too many. So I think you guys can see that now. Is that right? Okay, perfect. Thanks, Caitlin. And thanks, Ian, for the introduction. I've been asked really here today to kind of talk about my career path in medical devices and kind of what got me to where I am today. And hopefully some of the things, or at least a few, will resonate with some of you. And then obviously ask any questions. I'm pretty much an open book, so happy to share anything about any of my experiences. So Ian kind of gave a background about me, and that's really what I'm going to spend about the next 20 minutes going into. But as he said, I have my PhD in biomedical engineering from Georgia Tech and Emory. I'm a medical device leader, and actually my entire career has been in medical devices. Really, for me, it's been about my own personal experience and where my passion is. That's really what got me to where I am, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about the different companies I've worked with. And then I'm actually based here in San Jose, California. If interesting to you guys, I'll talk a little bit later, but I'm actually a remote employee for a company. Our headquarters are in Boston, Massachusetts, but a lot of our work and meetings that I attend are in Minneapolis. So I know remote is a big interest to a lot of people, so I'm also happy to talk on that. So I'll get started here. Okay, so really, I was going to start with my education and my early foundations and really where it all started. So I actually got my bachelor's in mechanical engineering at this very small school in Michigan. I was born and raised in Southern California, and most people always ask me, why are you going to school in Michigan? But for me, it was really about the co-op program they had. So in the 4 years that I went to school there, every 3 months I would transition between school and education and then working in industry. And as I kind of said in the last slide in my intro, I've always worked in the medical device space. So even as a freshman, I was working at a medical device company in San Diego, and then I would go to Michigan. So I went back and forth. So really by the end of my 4 years in undergrad, I had been working in industry for those 4 years, so a total of 2 years. And so that really opened my eyes to industry, understanding, it's not just about what you know, it's about who you know and how you work with different people. Even learning simple things like Outlook, email, things we take for granted now, but how corporations work, the different hierarchy and the structure, managers, directors, all of that. So that was really important to me. But also the other part of going to the school and getting my BS in mechanical engineering was a foundation in engineering. And so for me, it really all started in R&D, was tinkering in the lab, making different devices. And that's really what eventually got me started in industry. So that's where I started, Kettering University in Michigan. And then after that, I actually worked, I don't have it on here, but I worked for a medical device company for a short period of time while I was applying for grad school. So I pretty quickly learned and realized that I wanted to do more, that I wanted to contribute more, that I wanted to be on the first line, working with physicians, coming up with new and creative things. And for me, a big part of that was getting my PhD in biomedical engineering. And, funny enough story, while I was working in industry after undergrad, we in engineering, probably in all of these companies, you get these trade magazines. And we had got one about engineering, and it had actually highlighted who went on to be my thesis advisor, Ajit Yoganathan, and it talked about all the work he was doing in his graduate lab at Georgia Tech, testing devices. So he was collaborating with all the top medical device companies in cardiovascular that I wanted to eventually work for. And so I read his little blurb, and I got really interested in what you could do with a PhD in biomedical engineering. So that was kind of what got me going. I talked to Ajit, although he'd rather maybe call him Dr. Y, so if you're listening, Dr. Y. But really for me, it was working with physicians and establishing those key relationships early on. That's been critical in me continuing to build my network in my area of interest. So my graduate work was actually in the cardiovascular biomechanics space in valves. And funny enough, one of my thesis advisors, Dr. David Adams, was actually on one of my recent trials. He was one of my PIs. So we wrote a paper together. We got it published in New England Journal of Medicine. So, that network becomes so important, and you can create the network in many other ways. Another physician that I had worked with early on in my career, publishing a paper, he was one of my PIs in my study. And so I knew him from very different experiences. So, it's a pretty small area. So I'd say, don't burn any bridges there. And then also what Georgia Tech and the PhD gave me was a foundation in clinical science. And really that's where I eventually found my space. And what I do a lot of today is working with those physicians, designing studies and executing on those studies. So that brings me to 2011. And then the next is the early career. I think I had some industry experience before. I went to academia to get my PhD, but I always knew I wanted to come back to industry. And sometimes it's hard going from academia to industry, even figuring out how to do that, how to get in the job market, and even sell yourself that you can be in the job market. But I think for me, it was kind of going back to those relationships and the network I had built. And really, it was through my graduate research lab. We had someone come in actually from Edwards Life Sciences, and I was giving them a tour, and we were kind of showing them some of the work we were doing. And they were just wanting to build a program in the tricuspid valve, which is what my graduate work was on. So, went on to join them. I started in the R&D space, and then I moved up, taking on more and more responsibility, and then moved more into a clinical role. So basically developed a device from the bench, tested it in patients in early feasibility studies, and working with the physicians and the R&D team all along, learning CT, echo, different modalities we use in the space. Really, that was how it started for me. So that was a great experience. But after a period of time, I realized that I had another opportunity present itself within the company. For me, my first step in Edwards Life Science was really a direct translation of my PhD work, where I used that knowledge, publications, the physicians to get my foot in the door. But I soon realized that I wanted to move away from the individual contributor to really managing people and being able to do more. And so there was an opportunity in another group at Edwards, and so I took that. It gave me the people management experience. It was leading a TAVR imaging group. But what was different about that than my initial experience at Edwards is that it was a commercial product. The first experience in Edwards for the first couple years there was about new therapy, working with physicians, developing things, testing it out. What I look back on in this manager role in TAVI was it really helped me understand the business side of things. At first, I was like, oh, this isn't very exciting. We've kind of done this already. But in the role I am today, it was extremely valuable to understand how sales works, how we need to take a product from testing and clinical trials to be successful in the commercial space. So, I think you'll have different experiences along the way. And sometimes you may not understand how they fit into it. But I would say, kind of take chances, because for me, I think that was a really critical step for me. Okay, so then after Edwards, I was pretty happy at Edwards, loved my first job. I actually had someone that I had worked with in my graduate lab, Karthik, who had approached me about an opportunity at Abbott. He was working at Abbott. We had met in Ajay Yoganathan's lab, so we had similar interests. We were both in the cardiovascular space, and he was starting a new program in tricuspid and just designing the first tricuspid trial. And so he had brought me over. So I agreed to say yes. So I really moved, I look back at Abbott, and it was really an opportunity for me to rise in my leadership and really build a program from the ground up. And a team along with that. And so starting at the associate director position in clinical science and strategy with really tricuspid therapies and managing the trial, then I was promoted to director and overseeing the whole tricuspid product portfolio. And a big thing that happened at my time in Abbott was really leading that first of its kind tricuspid therapy. So for me, full circle, it was very rewarding. This was the graduate work that I had done. You don't often get that opportunity to see your graduate work translate into actually helping patients. And somewhere along the way, I always thought, we got to get the product to market to help patients. No, along the way in clinical trials, we've helped hundreds, if not thousands of patients. So for me, that was really eye-opening that, it's a journey and we can help people along the way. And so at the very end of my, experience at Abbott, my role had expanded. I took on leadership over our mitral and tricuspid programs. And so just broadening the different people I worked with inside the company as well as outside of the company. The mitral was really our flagship product in structural heart. And so it was very different, the experience with that product as opposed to tricuspid, which was a new product. So just understanding how you work with the different physicians that have been using your product for many years or new physicians. And then I also had the opportunity to present at the FDA advisory panel. This was for TriClip for us to get FDA approval. Great experience. I'm very grateful for having that opportunity. Many people in my position don't always get that opportunity. But I learned a lot. I got to work really closely with my physicians. It gave me a lot of visibility to, what I could do. So that being said, a lot of people had seen me and known about what I had done at Abbott, and that's where Boston Scientific had reached out to me about the opportunity that I have today. And before I kind of go to my last slide and talk about where I am today, one of the things I just added this little visual here, but me taking this role at Abbott was a big leap. And I think, it's not just about your career. I always tell my team it's about balance as well. At Edwards Life Sciences, I was based in Southern California. That's where my husband had his job. We actually met at Georgia Tech in grad school. So we were located in San Diego, but Abbott wanted me to be in the office and they were based in the Bay Area. And so, I think it's not just about your career, it's about other things. My husband was willing to support me in that move, and our entire family. We had 2 young kids, and oh, by the way, I was pregnant at the time. So it was a big, big decision for us, but I in no way regret it. It was a huge opportunity. So we moved from Southern California to the Bay Area, and we're based here today. And I had talked about being remote, and I'll kind of talk about that on the next one too. So this is my final slide, my current role where I'm at today. So all of those things really, I think you take different experiences, give you different things, set you up in different ways. I think, it's all about who you work for and kind of broadening that horizon. So I took a chance on Boston Scientific. I'm now the VP of Clinical overseeing our structural heart, our newly acquired renal denervation therapy. For those of you guys that don't know, I didn't know myself until we acquired it, but it actually helps reduce hypertension. It's a transcatheter procedure that goes into the renal arteries. We use ultrasound to basically ablate some of the nerves that help reduce hypertension. So we acquired a company that was early stage and in clinical trials. And so I manage a team that executes that trial and does that. So that's kind of here what you can see on the left, my clinical trial leadership. So I took what I was already doing in structural heart, expanded it to renal denervation, a whole new space for me. Still in cardiovascular, but totally new physicians, totally new indications. So that's been a learning experience for me. And then I expanded my role to really oversee our interventional cardiology clinical shared services support. So what does that mean? I lead a team that does all the statistics for our interventional cardiology clinical trials, the scientific communication, so all the podium presentations you see at conferences. We help our physicians with that. We lead all the finance for our clinical trials. These trials, just so you guys have some context, can be up to $90, $100 million when it's all said and done. So very costly. My team leads the clinical evidence evaluation. We just recently started a new AI program where we try to integrate AI into all of these things, and then we use metrics to oversee all of our trials and find opportunities and do things better. So that's kind of where I am today. You can kind of see the roadmap down here, 4 years in undergrad, 4+ in graduate. So that was about, less than 10 years in my studies. Then my first role was at Edwards Life Sciences for about 7 years, Abbott for about 7 more. I'm at Boston Scientific now. And I always joke with people, I say, well, based on my trajectory, you got me for about 7 years. And the only other company in my, structural heart strategic space would be, Medtronic. So I always tell my colleagues at Medtronic, I say, watch out. But it's a new adventure. I'm enjoying myself. I said I talk a little bit about the remote piece, and then I'll wrap up. And so hopefully we're okay with time. But basically, when I took this opportunity with Boston Scientific, of course, there was a lot of remote opportunities and people doing remote during COVID. But as with my previous company, Abbott and Boston Scientific, we're looking to move people really more into the office to create those collaborative environments once again. And so for me, it was a really, I think I'm very fortunate that I'm allowed to continue to work remote and be successful. For me, in my current role, I usually travel to our office in Arbor Lakes in Minnesota once a month to meet with my team and my cross-functional partners and the executive leadership. But then I'm on the road a lot as well, going to conferences, meeting with my different physicians at their sites, observing cases. And I also do a lot of our business development work. So as we look to expand in our renal denervation sector, we're also looking to expand and really get back into the structural heart. So look at different companies and opportunities for us. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to present. I'll be open to any questions later on after James presents. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Erin. Maybe we'll give the next speaker. I'll introduce the next speaker, and then we'll have a little bit of Q&A for both Erin and James. James after that. So the next speaker is James Kim. James has a bachelor's in computer engineering from Iowa State University and an MBA from Marquette. He has over 25 years of experience working in biomedical engineering. He started out at GE Healthcare, has worked at Northgate, and then more recently he started is the founder of a consulting firm called 551 Consulting. Is that right? And so he'll give a little bit of an overview on his trajectory throughout his career. So let's welcome James.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. All right. Well, thank you guys for the introduction. I am thrilled to be part of this keynote panel. As Mr. Steiner told me, here's my basic introduction about me. Computer engineering graduated in 2001. Got myself an MBA from Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In terms of my career perspective, 11 years with GE Healthcare, 4 years with Erin, a year with Pfizer, 8 years with Northgate Technologies, and 1 year of 551 Consulting, which is my own consulting firm. In terms of volunteering perspective, which I will allude to at the end of my presentation, but just to give you a perspective, I volunteer a lot because I think that's the one way of giving back to you guys so that you guys can be an exceptional leader when the time is due. So I'm part of the ISO group, TC121, SC6, WG7. If you're interested, you probably can figure out what that is. I'm also a resident mentor at MHub, which is a 60,000 square feet state-of-the-art heart tech incubator in Chicago. And also at Plug and Play, which is another premier global innovator that has 125 accelerator worldwide. Going back to where I got my education, I'm also a mentor at Iowa State University's Papa John's Center for Entrepreneurship, and also a mentor at Marquette University. And of course, because I have 2 boys, 15 and 13, they've been in scouting since they were in elementary school, and I'm the adult leader there at Scouting America, teaching leadership to other adult volunteers. So that is my background. But you're interested in about terms of career trajectory. So here's a little synopsis of my career journey. So if I would start from the left, I got myself a computer engineering degree in 2001, and then I went into General Electric. And instead of getting the new slogan, GE Healthcare, I wanted to bring in the logo that I introduced to, that is, we bring good things to life. So 11 years, I was there doing bedside monitoring, ambulatory care monitoring, and information data systems. Those are some of the segments that I've been here. Funny thing here, I like to tell a story. When I was part of General Electric, back in the day, it was a big conglomerate. Right now it's 3 big company. But GE back in the time owned NBC, the National Broadcasting Corporation. And back then, there was a TV show called ER. Well, ER was part of NBC, and GE Healthcare was owned by General Electric. All the product that you see in the ER show, I made that happen. So that was my product. That was kind of cool. From there, sort of the technology perspective, clinical domain, we need to learn about EKG and IBP, BP, cardiac output, SpO2. In terms of technology perspective, because we were in the forefront of ambulatory telemetry monitoring, so frequency hopping, channel hopping, TCP/IP communication, there was 11X, all that stuff, and how to utilize all that into the care areas of intensive care unit, NICU, and PACU. So that was my 11 years, which is a large company, big company, right? And I decided to myself, what would it be like if I were to join a smaller company? So on my previous slide, there was a company called Avery Dennison. For those of you that's on the panelists, you probably remember Avery label. I've probably heard of them. They sold that business off, and with that fund, they decided to invest in a medical device company called Advanced Medical Technologies. And this was back in 2012 or so, 2013, when I joined the company. I was hired in as a product manager, and we were the first one to get the FDA-approved wearable sensor back in the day, and that was a lot of fun. So I was from the forefront of the activity monitoring and sleep monitoring, which in terms of clinical perspective, caloric burn, steps, different stages of sleep, and using the galvanic steam response sensor, GSR, which is a measurement of the sweat. And part of that, I also had to, in terms of technology perspective, be very in tune with the performance of hydrocolloids, the sensors, the algorithm, because there was no algorithm at the time. Because all the sleep study that happens here with your Apple Watch, that didn't exist back in the day, so I had to work with the team to make that happen in the system. And in terms of market perspective, I need to understand how this wearable sensor could be used at home and also in lifestyle, so which is kind of interesting. And then after that, a few years later, I decided to join Pfizer. And this isn't the drug company. They had a infusion pump company, and I was hired as a product marketer there. So in terms of new generation infusion pump, you really need to learn about drug delivery, pain management, database management, all those libraries of drugs, and care insights. And of course, we do infusion pumps in the hospital, but also at home. So those are the things I need to learn. And then I decided to go back towards a much more smaller organization called Breakout Technologies. And this is where I really fell in love with surgery. If you look at my career trajectory thus far, it's been the four walls of the hospital. I did everything except for imaging. And I still don't have that imaging experience. But one area that I really wanted to get to know is the surgical space. So there, I was a director of innovation, leading clinicians, leading engineers and product managers to innovate the way we do soft tissue surgery. So I was working with a lot of innovation in the front of robotic surgery, laparoscopic surgery, and also lithotripsy. So there, in terms of clinical perspective, we need to know how to take care of the pneumo XX as a pneumoperitoneum, pneumothoracic, pneumo is a term of artificial space that you create, single surgery, thoracic surgery, cancer treatment, and many different surgical techniques. And of course, in terms of market perspective, as hospital and surgery center. So with that in mind, I wanted to make this slide a little bit catered towards the audience here. I think we have 49 of you that are undergraduate and graduate students. So I was thinking back when I was a student, and I pose a question, what I wish I knew as an engineering student. Okay, now in this context of a biomedical engineering student. So I decided to give you these little decisions I made, and hopefully you'll get some insight to it. And these are 3 decisions I made, okay? How are we doing on time? Okay, we're good. All right. So the first decision is to pick a problem worth learning. And quote in parentheses, not the title. Okay. What you see on your right is an image of a manual. Okay. So I learned this 5 years into GE Healthcare. As an engineer, you get to work on, as a computer engineer, you get to work on writing programs, making some systems, and working with clinicians. But the reason why I put this up here is I learned a lot, and I think Mrs. Spinner will appreciate this, is reading and trying to write instruction for use, a manual. And there's many different types of manual here. And the reason why I decided to go with it was it's not the most attractive thing for you to work on. So it's really hard for a corporation to see, who's going to work on this? And I thought it was very interesting. I read a lot of books. I thought it was very interesting. Like, how do you write a manual for a medical device? Oh boy, this is, if you really, I've been in the medical device for all my career, like Mrs. Spinner here. But as you go into deep dive of how a company write a manual for a medical device, you would appreciate all the different aspects of hardware that comes in together. Okay, so here, what I challenge you to do during your career is look for a problem that a person is probably not willing to select first, okay? Because it's not the most attractive. It may be boring superficially, but when you go inside of it, there's so much you can learn. I learned about a whole different regulation that Mrs. Spinner talked about in terms of FDA. You have to get the IFU ready, quick start guide, and the manual ready for submission to the FDA. You get to learn about that. You get to learn about the FMEA and risk assessment, how those workflow going into this. So work on something that is challenging here. I think that's the decision I made. I would like to suggest you to make, okay? So that's that. Now, the second decision that I'd like for you guys to make is build a T-shaped skill stack, okay? You probably got a little bit of a glance of that from my first decision. Writing a manual is not like writing an essay. It is in that. But here on the right-hand side, what you see here is a Da Vinci 5 robot system. So you can see the person with the red cap, that's the surgeon, doing on the console. You see a physician assistant within the 4 arms coming on the left, and the patient is on the bed. And on the right side, that is the robotic system with the tower and the robot and the console. Okay. I'm not going to talk about the robot. Here, there is something that is very, very important to make this robotic surgery to happen. And before robotic surgery is called laparoscopic surgery. Okay, before that it was open surgery. But in order for laparoscopic surgery and robotic surgery to happen, there's one thing that people don't understand, but that's very, very important. And you probably got a sense of what I'm going to talk about. It is about creating a pneumoperitoneum. Okay, so why does this matter? How does this build a T-shaped skill stack? Okay, let me tell you a story. To create a pneumoperitoneum, you need to have an insufflator. Insufflator is a regulator that delivers a CO2 gas into a space, into an area to create an artificial space. And within that space, you have the robotic arm comes in and do the manipulation of the tissue there, okay? Here, in order to be really good at what you do, you just need to understand why you're using CO2 gas and what is the pressure that it needs to be. Why is the pressure so important for the visualization, for the physician? Why is it so important for the patient and for the anesthesiologist, okay? And what is the impact that has in the postoperative care and recovery? So as a biomedical student and as an engineer, you're there to solve a problem. But part of the key thing of being an exceptional engineer, and in this case for biomedical engineer, is to really understand the technology behind it, but also the clinical application of those technology. So I say decision number 2 is to build a T-shaped stack, okay? And before any going further, let me just go back to decision number 1, okay? How you can apply for something like this as an undergraduate, also as a graduate student, is when you're in a laboratory and you have to follow procedure, okay? Follow those procedures, but also think about, is there a way that can be improved upon, okay? If you train that over and over again, okay, when your professor asks you to do something, that is a skill set that you can apply at work, which is very important, okay? And here is, like I said, really understand the technology and apply the skill set to the other parts of your career. Okay, decision number 3 is learn how products get bought. this student had alluded to a little bit on her talk. And what you see here on the right is the Metria sensor. As I'm mentoring a lot of different students at the Papa John's Center for Entrepreneurship and also professionally at MHub and Plug and Play, what I see very common as an engineer, as a kind of founder, is they are so focused on technology and kind of have a hard time connecting how that technology could be used and sold. Okay, the reason why I brought up the Metria patch here is that was the first FDA approved medical device patch. There was nobody out there who's trying to sell this, and it took a really long time to get this up and going. Okay, so part of the things that I really got to appreciate is that as you're developing something, try to have an open mind and ask an open-ended question as to how would we sell this invention that we have here. Okay, so those are being a literate in commercialization is very important in your career. And as I'm summing it up, just one more thing I want to tell you: building relationship is so important. Networking, especially networking that grows effortlessly. Okay, what I mean by that is if you really like what you do and you join, you don't have to put too much effort into it. You just naturally becomes part of that growth and get to know a lot of different people. So I just put that up here is that networking, what you're doing here, being part of this group, and even outside of the BME organization, networking is such an important thing to have in growing your career. So if you remember one thing from the presentation is to be curious. Happy to give you have a follow-up conversation if you like. What you see on the lower left-hand corner, that's my LinkedIn QR code. Send me a message if you like, or email there, or set up an appointment for a quick chat if you want to do so. But in summary, is pick a problem to solve and become an expert at it, and understand why it is successful. Okay, and also once you have that, share your stories, and I'm sure you guys will be able to go where you have never dreamed before. So that's my presentation. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much, James, for that. So at this point, we can take some questions from the audience. I think actually because we're in webinar, they can only type them in. Is that correct? So if you have there's a Q&A link at the bottom. If you want to put a question in there, Caitlin and I will kind of move through those to kind of warm everybody up. I have a couple questions, and maybe I'll start with you, Erin. So one of the things that you talked about, but kind of really briefly in passing, but I think this may resonate with a lot of students, is you said, I really only thought that I could be affecting people's lives if something came to market, but I didn't realize there was a lot of time before that. And I think a lot of BME students go into biomedical engineering because they want to impact people's lives. And maybe to comment on kind of the surprise of that, like was that just because you had lots of people in the trials? Were you finding out things that were automatically being translated to patients before this was work? Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit? I think that would be something interesting for.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things we do, I think you guys can hear me, but one of the things we do in the medical device space, probably James does too at the larger corporations, is we usually share the patient success stories with employees. A lot of us go into the space for the same things that you talked about, Ian, is to help people. I live in the heart of Silicon Valley. My neighbors all work for Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, are making tons of money, and I'm here making less money, but I'm helping people. So I think what we do in these large corporations is we give visibility to how it helps people, and we highlight the patient success stories. And so being part, and my role as a director in clinical is I would approve some of those stories that we would create and send out to our employees. And also being a part of the clinical trial, I would help and monitor some of the site stories that they would talk about the patients. And I don't think I ever really realized it until it was the end and we talk about the patients in our clinical trial and see how it helps them, is that it doesn't have to be a commercial product. We're helping them along the way. And for me, that was really impactful because they're taking a chance on us in clinical trials, right? We haven't proven it to be effective. Usually we've proven it to be safe. But for me, that was really rewarding because it's a way that we give back. I think it's important to me is just, contributing to society is by helping patients with medical devices. So it wasn't like an aha moment. I think it was kind of always coming at me. And even in my early career in Edwards, every town hall we had every quarter, they would show a patient story and I was always crying. Like I'm not a very emotional person, but I was always in tears. So there's lots of different ways we can help patients.
Great, thanks. I had one question for James, and then there's a couple, and we'll move on to this. I think it was great. We had kind of two perspectives here. James, you kind of towards the end moved in, or very recently, just into consulting, right? And so I'm kind of just had the question, like, was that something that you saw happening early in your career? Was that something you kind of walked into? Is this a personality kind of trait? There are a lot of students I think that are out there that are kind of looking between, do I want to, go into consulting? Do I want to work in industry, or even more, do I want to start something new? And maybe you could give a little perspective on that.
Yeah. I was never thinking about being in a consulting role at all. It just happened, just naturally, because I think I've been in the medical device industry for a long time, but in many different areas of it. But the common theme here is, I'm going to put a slide here because we don't have the time to it, is I'm a technologist. I love technology being part of solving things, and that's who we are as an engineer. And just understanding technology is becoming a very natural thing for me. And I see a question here: what is your perspective on use of AI? Just to answer that question, and the question, Mr. Schneider, that you asked, is I think before going into consulting, I think it's very important to understand and be part of the industry what it takes to bring innovation to happen. Okay, once you understand that core context of it, then you'll become a very exceptional consulting person. Okay, it is that experience, the human element, as somebody would say, that AI cannot generate. Okay, how to work with different departments in an organization and what it takes to make that happen. That human element of it, but you being part of that, it is so important. And as a consultant, now I understand what it takes to make that happen, and I'm here to serve a client. And now you know how to cater that package to each of the person that you deal with. So my theory is, don't go to consulting right away. go join the industry for many years, maybe a decade, and then afterward, if you like, then come on.
Okay, great. So this question is really kind of directed towards both of you. So when you hire early and mid-career engineers or scientists, and maybe just comment on what differentiates the people who thrive with those who struggle. Maybe you could comment on that. I think that's, and maybe the person who asked this could elaborate a little bit. I think that's for students thinking about like what things do they need to kind of work on and what are attractive. Whether they're, I don't want to say personality traits, but like proficiencies, competencies.
I'll just comment first, and James, you can add too if you want. I mean, one of the things, even all along my career, whether it was early people that I'm hiring to senior directors these days, it's about passion. And I think that's one thing that's gotten me so far. Like I talked about my neighbors doing, tech and all these other things. My passion is helping patients and giving back. And so I'm always asking people, but why do you want this job? Whether we found them or they found us, like what interests you about this job? I think that's always very critical. Jobs are difficult, times can be tough. They're not always great, but what keeps you going? So I think that's always important. And I would say the other thing too is willingness to learn and knowing that you may have experience in your area, but willingness to listen to others and take direction. I think the question was about early and mid. I think that is really critical. Don't assume you know everything. People have a lot of different experiences. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, for me, I would go back to what I said about decision number one. For early career folks, what you're doing at school right now, you think it doesn't apply, but it does. Like going into preparing your capstone projects or how you deal with your lab work. Okay, if you really thought through and go through that, okay, that same level of discipline is required in medical device. That's the only reason why we are able to submit things to the FDAs, and that happens within 90 days very smoothly, right? Once you know how to do that, and then during your interview process, just see how your experience on that relate to the job you're seeking. Okay, I think that makes a tremendous difference, and then you'll be really proficient at it because now you understand why documentation is important. You demonstrated that. In terms of mid-career, I think it goes to the issue number two that I told you about. Being really know what you are trying to get into and trying to describe that. That's going to really give an impression on the folks that are interviewing you. Because in the mid-career, you really need to know the topic at hand. So I think that is the what I recommend.
Yeah, I think it's really great, kind of what both of you mentioned. I think sometimes there's maybe like I don't know how to describe, like an over-instrumentalization of the BME education. Like they're training you to do particular things, and I need to like prepare myself in a very kind of technical way to do a particular thing. As opposed to kind of Erin, like what you were talking about, like demonstrating, like being teachable and demonstrating enthusiasm, and then kind of James, the same thing, like being able to demonstrate whatever problem in your design, even if it was a completely different design project, like demonstrating like your ability to solve that problem, not this problem.
100%. And I think we have still a long ways to go to teach industry how you use PhDs in the workplace. I mean, I think I was very fortunate that the company wanted to utilize my specific knowledge in that space. Otherwise, I think it would have been hard to get a job. But what I continue to advocate for, and nowadays I or my directors hire PhD for, is clinical science, a way of thinking, a way of problem solving. So to the question here about someone with a genetics and genomics PhD getting into the clinical trial space, I wouldn't focus on the genetics and PhD. I would focus on the PhD and what it teaches you. It teaches you to work with experts in the space. It teaches you to communicate your ideas, right? To learn about a new space. I think that's, if nothing else, there's many things a PhD does, but I think PhDs are really well positioned for emerging therapies, right? You're doing your PhD on a field or something that's never been understood before. And not a lot of people have that. A lot of people in industry oftentimes are following an SOP. This is the way we've always done it. Just apply it to this. But PhDs, I think, help you to think outside of the box. They help you to problem solve. And they help you, even just your dissertation and how you present it. It's helping others understand that are maybe not experts in your space. To me, those are the most valuable things. And if you work with physicians, talk about in the clinical trial space, how you work with those type of people. So I think it's changing the narrative. I think, Ian, you said it too, like in your graduate studies, it's so focused on your specialty. But when you get a job, if it's outside of that, it's what you bring as a PhD. You got to sell the degree.
So then going into kind of the last question here, like what happens when you like students feel like they don't have a lot of industrial experience, kind of going for the first time into that, whether it's I don't have an internship and I'm looking for that first job after my bachelor's, or I honestly, like for me, like I went straight to graduate school. I didn't actually do an internship. I did a lot of research as an undergraduate. If I wanted to pivot into industry, I feel like that would have been kind of intimidating. So there's something you can kind of talk about that, for someone who hasn't had that experience, how they may deal with that.
I think the network helps. James, you also touched on the network. While I had worked in industry before, it was really about my network. I work with my thesis advisor because so I talked to him. I was talking to other people on my thesis panel about who do they know, who could they put me in touch with. Even one of my the surgeon I talked about, I told him, I've got job offers from this company and this company. What do you think? And he's like, oh, well, that's the one that's innovating. You should go work for them. So I think I've also learned this too, is like establishing a network that you're not just coming to them for a job. You don't want to just check in with people when you're asking them for a job. It's okay to reach out to people like us just to kind of get mentorship or say hi at a conference, when it's that person who's only reaching out because, they're like, do you have any jobs? I think it's the network,
Yeah, I just 100%. I think Spinner, you nailed it. It's being curious all the time. I think that's the key. Is when you talk to people, don't say I'm looking for a job. No, ask them about what you do, and I'm very interested in that. Can you tell me more about it? That is the way to start a conversation. And the thing is, when you go to a networking session or some conference or something like that, they give you a background about why the person is here. They're specifically they're exhibiting. do a little bit of research about it, and how your study, getting a PhD in that field, has related to it. And they'll say, hey, I'm this, and I'm looking for a job. No, that's not the right way to start a conversation. The right way, I think, to start a conversation is, I'm very curious about what you do. Could you tell me about this? Because I did a search on it. Oh, is this what it is? Oh, because I thought it was this. I would like to learn more. That's how you make a connection. And once you start doing that, you get very good at it. And by the time, you're gonna accelerate your networking without any effort, because you love posing that kind of open-ended question.
Great. No, that's awesome. Thank you again for two wonderful talks. I think at this point, why don't I just have a go round for the panelists who or breakout session speakers who are here, just to give a quick kind of, your name, maybe what you currently do, and then we'll move over to the breakout sessions if that's okay. And I may call on people just because I think Zoom like randomly puts you in different orders depending on where you are. And so I'll call on people, and you just want to give a quick introduction. We can do that, and then we can move over to the breakout session at the other link. And everybody has in the email. Everybody has the other link. Is that correct? Okay, awesome. So let's start with and is it Jusong Wang?
Yes, yes. Hello, everyone. It's really nice that have this opportunity to be here and listening to Erin and James sharing their experience. I'm personally also very impressive about their whole experience, and I also have a lot of questions to ask them maybe later. So I am currently right now a senior research scientist. I work in a company named ZimV, a top 5 dental implant manufacturer medical device company. And then so in my role, as I'm working in the research department, so at the beginning I was just a test of materials and then trying to help marketing to make the claims. Later on, when I'm keep developing my career, I started to have interactions with the clinicians. Like what Erin said, that's really opened my mind and then benefit me about my research role. Actually, I started to know how clinicians take the product, what they really want. And I think that's the very, very important thing when I'm doing my career right now. And then as my career goes by, I decided to get my MBA degree. And then I think that experience also benefit a lot for my current role. And then I personally right now also wanted to keep exploring and developing myself into different roles and then to a more cross-functioning position, so that as I really involved. And then since I also have a PhD degree, and then I feel that it's self-explanatory a lot about my enthusiasm about the field, and then how my feelings are sharing the same with Erin, like how I can help the patient and then the thing. So that's basically about me. And then thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thanks.
Yes.
Holly, is it Cotter?
Cotter, yep. Hi, I'm Holly Cotter. I've been I had a bioengineering degree from Pitt. I just have my bachelor's. I don't have any other advanced degrees. I've been in industry for over 10 years. I worked with companies ranging from startups to larger organizations. And then for the last 5 years, have been a consultant. I was a consultant for a larger firm for 4 years. And over the last year, have started my own consulting practice, as well as launching a community for medtech industry called Indie MedTech. So I am happy to be here and answer any questions regarding consulting and regulatory quality and clinical affairs, especially for startups. So I exclusively support startups now.
Great. Thank you, Holly. Zane? Oh, I think you're muted.
By far the most senior person here. There's no doubt about that. Maybe not in position, but in age. I have been in my background. I attended the University of Pittsburgh, got a doctorate in chemical engineering, sort of an odd, but then I went to Johns Hopkins for occupational health, and then afterwards Penn State University for an MBA. So I work for a 100-year-old company, MSA. So we're not as big as you. We're about a $2 billion company. We're global. But I make occupational health, respiratory protective devices, pacemaker batteries, and solid oxygen for aerospace applications. My first actually job when I was young was I worked at Space Shuttle for Rockwell International. But regardless, how I got involved with this is I am an adjunct faculty member at Duquesne University, their biomedical engineering program, and also a expert witness for toxic tort matters, respiratory matters themselves. So again, I guess my focus actually, taking my background in chemical engineering, materials, and occupational health, anatomy, physiology, etc., is in biomaterials. That's really probably my specialty, is the interaction between tissues within the body, on the body, and synthetic materials, whether they be polymeric, metallic, or ceramic. And knowing the bottom line is I'm well acquainted with, as I talk with students, I have the good fortune to tip my toe both in academia and in industry. So I'm well acquainted with the product development process. I deal with people at Carnegie Mellon. They know the research very well. We work with them between AI and Pitt Medical School on bringing that to fruition to actually develop a viable product. Because there is a big difference, as we know, in industry, simply doing research and bringing a product to fruition. So that's it.
Great, thanks. Donna?
Hi, I'm Donna Vaughn. I graduated back in 2024 at the University of Michigan Dearborn with a major in bioengineering and mechanical engineering. So I'm pretty new still to industry, but as of right now, I work as a contractor for Roche Diagnostics, and one of my main roles there is as a field service technician is to do preventative maintenance work on the analyzers at hospitals and labs.
Great, thanks, Donna. Prem?
Hi, everyone. Prem Midha. I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering at the University of Missouri, and then I went to Georgia Tech for my master's and PhD in bioengineering. Coincidentally, I worked in the same lab as Erin, so we go way back. Now I am working for Abbott as a senior principal R&D engineer on a transcatheter mitral valve. I did a short stretch of a couple of years in consulting with Exponent. Decided that wasn't the life for me, and so now I'm back on kind of the research and development front.
Great, thanks, Ben. Jeremy?
Jeremy Lim. I did my bachelor's in BME at Northwestern. I'm another Georgia Tech PhD in biomedical engineering. I've spent my career at a company in Marietta, Georgia called MiMedx. We focus on human placental-derived tissue products. So what's interesting about that is depending on the region of the world that you're introducing your products into, they could be human tissue transplants, they could be biological drugs, or they could be considered medical devices. So I spent the first half of my career in R&D, and then for the past 6 years or so, I've been working in global regulatory affairs, focused on different pathways to market-based products.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. Nicole?
Yeah, hi everyone. So Nicole Hurley, I got my undergrad at UC Berkeley in bioengineering, and then another Georgia Tech PhD grad here. And so quite a few of us, right? So from there, I went to work at Gore as a product specialist, and then Medtronic as global marketing, and a little bit of Office of Medical Affairs. So now I'm actually at Intuitive Surgical in the clinical marketing team, and actually I'm in scrubs, just jumped out of the OR. We just launched a new indication, so I'm in the process right now of helping get that launch off the ground.
Great, thanks, Nicole. Timothy.
My name is 57. I am actually graduated from Pixie in biomedical engineering in 2010. I did graduate research and worked in several early stage university patents, and also ran a small prototyping shop with panelists, got to explore a lot of the hands-on side that we didn't get to learn in school, and then went full-time into patent. So I'm a certified patent practitioner and certified licensing professional, and I spend my days trying to describe all the cool things that y'all come up with and protect it so that other people don't steal it.
Great. Zach.
I'm Zach Dooley. I work currently as a senior manager in research and testing at Orthofix Medical. Primarily, we work on spine implants, round screw cages, anything to straighten your back out. I did my undergrad at Marquette University and finished in 2003. And then I did my master's at University of Southern California.
Thanks, Dan.
Sorry, just joining late. I was in the other room. Dan Flo. I'm a Boston Scientific. I did my undergrad at Iowa State University, master's at St. Thomas here in Twin Cities. I'm an R&D manager working in our interventional cardiology unit.
Great. So at this point, let's move over to the other rooms, and I think Caitlin will put everybody in the rooms that they should be in.
Yep, so I just shared a link to accessing the breakout rooms in the chat. So if our attendees and also our speakers want to head over there, and I will be over there soon, so you will be placed in a brief waiting room. So we'll see everyone over there. So I'll just hang out for now and just wait for to make sure all of our attendees have a link.